my name. Who is this?
I'm not here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Alex, you're here. Your name is here. I don't know where.
Look where. Oh yeah, this one.
Where?
Here.
Where am I?
Here.
Oh, my name is there.
Yeah. Alex is not my neighbor anymore.
What time is it now? Calling the meeting to order.
That's when I say like. Okay.
Yes. Welcome to the City of Milpitas Planning Commission meeting. Today is March 26th, Wednesday. I would like to welcome everybody to today's meeting. I'd like to read the public comment instructions. Oral public comments may only be provided live during the Planning Commission meeting in person. All comments provided shall be limited to 3 minutes or less, as determined by the chair. All public members will be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. Members of the public may submit written comments by email to planningdepartment@milpitas.gov. Okay, so please everybody rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Awasthi will lead.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Medina, can you take a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, commissioners and staff. I will take attendance, starting with Commissioner Kong.
Present.
Commissioner Wasti.
Present.
Commissioner Medina Ashby is absent this evening. Commissioner Albana.
Present.
Commissioner Galang.
Present.
Vice Chair Calkins.
Present.
And Chair Gupta.
Present.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Will you ask the questions?
Thank you, Chair. I ask the Chair and every other member of the Commission whether he or she has any financial or personal conflict of interest related to any of the items on tonight's agenda.
Commissioner Kong.
None.
Commissioner Wasti.
None.
Commissioner Albana.
None.
Commissioner Galang.
None.
Vice Chair Calkins.
None.
And Chair Gupta.
None.
Thank you.
Thank you. I further ask the Chair and every other member of the Commission to please disclose any campaign contributions of $100 or more received within the last 12 months from any of the parties entering into contracts with the City on tonight's agenda, or contributions received from any development project applicant for development projects on tonight's agenda.
Commissioner Kong.
None.
Commissioner Awasti.
None.
Commissioner Albana.
None.
Commissioner Galang.
None.
Vice Chair Calkins.
None.
And Chair Gupta.
None.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect no reported conflicts. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The next topic is approval of tonight's meeting agenda. I hope everyone has gone through the meeting agenda that was sent to you earlier. So may I have a motion for approval of our agenda for tonight?
Chair, I'd like to give a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Kong.
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti.
Aye.
Commissioner Albana.
Aye.
Commissioner Galang.
Aye.
Vice Chair Calkins.
Aye.
And Chair Gupta.
Aye.
Thank you.
Unless somebody has any issues or questions with it.
I'll make the motions to approve the meeting minutes.
Chair, I believe the acting planning director has a comment.
Sure.
Yeah, so the recommendation language from the meeting minutes from February 26th, it should say that instead of what it says on what was printed, it should say, staff recommends that the Planning Commission open and close the public hearing and adopt resolution number 25-004, recommending that the City Council, one, approve general plan map and text amendment number GP 24-0001 to change the descriptions of the town center, TWC, and neighborhood commercial mixed use NCMU, and change the land use designation of certain parcels. Two, approve zoning map and text amendment number ZA 24-0001 to establish the neighborhood commercial mixed use districts and subdistricts, and update the existing town center districts to establish the subdistricts. And three, adopt the Housing Opportunity Districts addendum to the Milpitas General Plan 2040 FEIR and the supplemental letter to the addendum, with the suggestion to amend the parking regulations to be consistent with the comprehensive zoning ordinance update and amend section 4 of the resolution.
So how is that different than what was sent out? I'm not clear yet.
So if you look on page 5 of the Planning Commission meeting minutes towards the bottom, the language there is incorrect. It references a different project. So I believe it was a typo.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now,
Chair, can you clarify? Where is it?
On page 5 of the meeting minutes from February 26th, towards the bottom, right before new business. So the recommendation text there references a different planning permit.
I see.
Yeah.
So we'd strike it out. I see. Just that, to strike it out, but no replacement.
It will be struck out and then replaced with the language that acting planning director just stated.
I see. Thank you.
okay, did we have a motion to approve the minutes? We already had that, right? Let's have a motion again for passing the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the past minutes of February the 26th, 2025.
And with clarification with the amendment proposed by the acting planning director?
Yes, with the proposed amendment to strike out that portion that was mentioned and replaced by what was mentioned by planning director.
Maybe
I'll second that.
Oh, thank you.
Let's take,
Yes, Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Awasti,
I abstain. I was absent.
thank you. Commissioner Albana,
Aye.
Commissioner Galang,
Aye.
Vice Chair Colkins,
Aye.
and Chair Gupta.
aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are in the announcement section. I'd like to, we had planning commissioners statewide meeting a few weeks ago, and 3 of us commissioners attended the training over there. And maybe 3 of them who attended, I think one of them is not here. So the other 2, maybe you can give 1 to 2 minute summary of what you learned over there, any takeaways. So can we start with Vice Chair Coggins?
Thanks, and I do appreciate the city and the staff for helping us attend that, and the city for giving us permission to go. It was a very enlightening conference from a technical standpoint too, just the things that we learned, and some of the new bills that are coming down the pipeline, the people that are involved, and it was really interesting to learn kind of, I want to say, how handcuffed we are at the city level of what we can do with some of the projects. And the approvals, the way the things come down from the states. It was very enlightening too to have conversations with some of the cities who are dealing with the builder's remedy plans because they have not put together their, city plans. So it really opened my eyes to how important what we're doing is. And I know sometimes we all get to make some rather tough decisions, not always popular, but they're things we need to do to keep the city moving forward in a way that we all want to be part of it. So, yeah, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to attend that.
Commissioner Kong?
So I want to echo Commissioner Calkin's sentiment. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to attend. This is my first time being at the Planning Commissioners Academy, and special thanks goes out to Liz Medina, who made the arrangements. I did prepare a few of the top 3 learnings that I took away from the 2.5-day event. So the first one is very close to what Commissioner Calkins has also mentioned. It's called like the new role of planning commissioners, because there's so little that we can do today with the enactment of over 250 new state laws that has happened since 2017. And in our current position, we are kind of limited to what we can do is to only design review based on objective design standards. And even with that, the state law is able to supersede some of those things. So I did take away a few tips that was shared by the other, seasoned members of the planning commissioner, as well as staff and various people who are in this space. They have shared that what we can do to improve outcomes is we can actually start asking to look at what's coming down the pipeline, the projects that's coming down the pipeline, and proactively engage the community early on before the public hearings, and then try to work amicably with the developers to ask for voluntary changes or desired features from the community before the public hearing happens. So if anything that we can do proactively will definitely help to facilitate a good outcome that will be supported by the community. And also there is an input about making sure that we understand the guidelines on how we can meet with stakeholders. Because it might not be clear if we are doing official duty or not. So it would be useful to have city attorney's guidance on how we can do that engagement as a member of the Planning Commission. And then the second key learnings I got is also with the legislative updates. It was very useful to understand what's happening this coming legislative season. And the 3 priorities that are being highlighted is the state legislators wants to reduce cost of housing. They want to increase accountability to RENA, and they want to reduce barriers for infill transit projects. So we will be looking at a lot of impacts to our city, such as the reduction of impact fees, as well as increased compliance with the RENA goals. So, one tip that we got from it was to make sure that all of us are aware of the bills and be proactive in raising our concerns to our state representatives. So the engagement with our assemblyman as well as senator will be very useful. And then lastly, also along the lines of what Commissioner Calkins has mentioned about builder's remedy, it was very interesting to hear from town of Saratoga, who are currently faced with 19 builder's remedies project as high as 12 stories high because they failed to certify their housing element. So this was a wake-up call to a lot of cities who have not done their certification early. But I feel very proud that we are representing City of Milpitas, because Milpitas is one of the few cities that got our certification done very early. And that's definitely a lot of admiration, and kudos to the staff that has made it happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kong. That was quite elaborate. Any other planning commission have any announcements? How about planning director?
No announcements from the planning director. Thank you.
Public forum. Members of the public are invited to speak on any item that does not appear on today's agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less at the chair's discretion. When called to speak, you are encouraged to state your name for the record. As an item not listed on the agenda, no action can be taken. However, the Planning Commission may instruct the staff to place the item on a future meeting agenda. Now we'll start the public hearing with item number 9, capital improvement program, general plan conformity finding. Can we have the presentation, please?
Do we have to close the public hearing first?
That was the public forum, the general public forum. It was not a public hearing that needed to be closed.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Good evening, Chair, Commissioner. My name is Lee Ha Iem, Public Work Division Managers overseeing the design constructions sections and administering the capital improvement programs. The purpose of tonight's presentation is for the Planning Commissions to review the proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement programs and adopt a resolution finding that the program is in conformance with the adopted general plan. Next slide, please. For tonight's agenda, I will start with providing the overview of the proposed capital improvement program, outline the key projects and their objective. Next, I will discuss the general plan conformance, focusing on how these projects identified in the capital improvement program align with and advance the goal and policy and implementation strategy outlined in the city general plan. I will then conclude with the staff recommendations for moving forward. Next slide, please. Next, I will provide an overview of this year's budget. Next slide, please. Here is the proposed capital improvement program calendar and process. The proposed 5-year capital budget was presented to the City Council at the study sessions on February 11th, and on March 3rd, the Park section of the capital improvement program was presented to the Park and Recreation and Cultural Resource Commissions. Tonight, I will demonstrate how the proposed capital improvement program is in conformance with the City General Plan. Then staff will return back to the City Council in May or June for the considerations and adoption of the 5-year budget. Next slide, please. Before diving into the next fiscal year budget, I will provide you with the core foundations of this program. The program is a comprehensive 5-year budgeting and planning tool for the city infrastructures that is updated annually. The document prioritizes the city capital project for new infrastructures and repair and replacement of the existing infrastructure. The program outlines the improvement, associated costs, project schedule, and its funding sources. The document is organized into 6 categories that include community, park, street, water, sewer, and storm drain improvements. Only the funding request for the first year of the 5-year is fully funded, which is effective starting July 1st. Projects in the subsequent 4 years may be partially funded or not funded at all based on the available fundings. Next slide, please. Here are the City Council 7 budget priorities, which align with the elements of the general plans. The CIP is in conformance with these priorities. Next slide, please. So the scope and funding change to any existing projects or new project requests by the department will be reviewed and evaluated and prioritized by the engineering divisions and finance department for conformance with City Council priorities, available funding, and resources. Criteria for evaluating the funding requests are listed on this slide. And once we establish a list of the funding requests, we will review it with the City Manager's Office and bring the recommendation to the City Council for considerations for the approval of the capital budget. Next slide, please. The 5-year capital improvement program that is brought forward tonight consists of 148 projects for an estimated budget amount of $245 million. The table shown is the detailed breakdown of the estimated cost with associated number of projects under each category. Next slide, please. Here is the summary of the proposed funding for each category in fiscal year 25-26, which will be effective starting July 1st. Staff recommend funding 37 projects, with an estimate budget of 38.7 million. Next slide, please. So for the next few slides, I will present the 37 projects that are being recommended to be funded in this coming fiscal years. Each table will show you the project descriptions, recommended funding amount, and its funding sources. This table gives you the 10 projects proposed to be funded in the community category, which includes 3 new projects. Majority of the projects are for the upkeep of the city existing infrastructure. For example, majority of the recommended funding for the city building improvements is for the upkeep and maintenance of the existing building. The work includes the replacement of the window at Public Works Police Department buildings, Police Dispatch Kitchen remodel, and the design of aquatics at Milpitas Sports Center. And the funding for the city roof improvements is for the design of the roof rehabilitations at Police Department and Public Works building. The last 3 projects in bold are the new projects that are recommended to be added. IT department is establishing a formalized computer replacement program to strengthen the security and enhance the performance and staff productivity. The existing AV system at community center, senior center, and sports center have exceeded their useful life and need the replacement. The funding request for the last project on this slide is the purchase of urban search and rescue vehicle, which will be used by fire departments to respond and deploy on special and high-risk operations. Next slide, please. Here are the 4 projects in park category recommended to be funded in the amount of 3.8 million. The planning phase for Metro Tango Subdistrict Park and Senate Park Playground renovation design will be completed this year. Staff recommend funding the next phase of the projects. The design of the sports center bleacher replacement is completed, and staff recommend funding for the construction phases. Next slide, please. Here are the 9 projects recommended to be funded in the amount of 16.2 million in street category. 8 projects are dedicated for the upkeep of existing infrastructures, and 1 new project is proposed. The funding recommended for South Milpitas Boulevard Road extensions is to construct the road across Penitentiary Creek to connect to Sengo Court extensions. The project is anticipated to start in spring of 2026. The funding for the street resurfacing project 2026 will resurface Yellowstone Avenue and South Park Victoria Drive neighborhood. Next project is SS4A improvement project. This is the only new project in this street category. The city received a 2.9 million grants through the Safe Street and Road for All grant program for the planning, design, and implementations of bicycle and pedestrian safety enhancement along school route within the city. The planning and the design is anticipated to start in 2026, pending funding agreements. Next slide, please. Here are the 8 projects recommended to be funded in the amount of 3.1 million in water category. Majority of the funding is for the improvement of the city existing infrastructure to ensure a reliable and safe water supply for the community. The fire flow pipeline improvement is the new project recommended to be added. Staff will start with the first phase of the pipeline improvement design to upsize the water main to meet with the fire flow requirement as identified in the water master plan. Next slide, please. Here are the first table gives you the 5 sewer projects being recommended to be funded from sewer fund for the amount of 6.2 million. Majority of the funding for the city are for the city contributions to the rehabilitation projects at the San Jose wastewater facility. 1 new project is recommended, that is for the sanitary sewer improvement design. Staff will begin the design of the first of 12 phases to improve the sewer pipeline as identified in the sewer master plan. The next table shows you the only new project being recommended to be funded in storm drain category in the amount of 4.6 million. That is for the storm drain repair work on Technology Drive. Next slide, please. Next, we will review how the project in the CIP conform with the city general plan. We will go over some projects listed in the capital improvement program, but more specific details are included in the staff report. Next slide, please. The city general plan identified the community visions for futures and provide a framework that will guide decisions on city growth, developments, and conservation of open space and resources in the manner that is consistent with the quality of life desired by the city residents and businesses. Staff review and analyze the projects to ensure the program is in conformance with and will further the goal, policy, and implementation strategy outlined in the general plan. In accordance with California Government Code Section 6540401, it required the Planning Commission to review and report to the City Council as to the conformity of the proposed capital improvement program with the adopted general plan. Next slide, please. For the next few slides, I will highlight specific projects that directly contribute to achieving the goal and action as outlined in the general plan. I will start with the community improvement category. Staff have found that the Milpitas Gateway Main Street Specific Plan Update, Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Update, Metro Impact Fee Study, and Milpitas Gateway Main Street Impact Fee Study and Sense of Place. This project meets several goals and action in the element of land use, community design, circulations, and economic development. Next slide, please. In addition, staff also found that the City Hall fountain and landscape renovation projects, public art program, historic resource master plan update, and gateway signage projects that will comply with the community design element goals of public space, public art and gateway, landmark, and wayfindings. Next slide, please. The following projects include fire station improvements, city building improvements, public safety disaster plan update, fire station number 1 modular building, and the urban search and rescue vehicle are the emergency preparedness projects related to safety elements as outlined in the general plan. The next 2 projects include climate action plan and the community and senior center energy resilient projects are the example of the projects that meet various climate policy. Next slide, please. The following are the projects under park category that meet the objective of the Park and Recreation Master Plan that comply with park, recreation, and open space elements. Staff found that the citywide park, sport field and court rehabilitation projects, ARPA park rehabilitation projects, replacement of bleacher at sports center, and Senate Park playground renovation project will meet the goal for upkeeping of the existing park and recreation facility. Additionally, staff also found that the Metro Tango Subdistrict Park, softball field improvement, pickleball improvement, and Innovation District Park and Trail Master Plan will provide a public space for activity and social interactions and to serve the community. Next slide, please. In the street improvement category, majority of the projects comply with the main principle of circulation elements, which is to reduce reliance on automobile by providing and emphasizing the use of non-vehicular mode of transportations. Projects such as South Milpitas Boulevard Road Extensions, Montague Pedestrian Overcrossing projects, and bicycle improvement projects will enhance and improve the network connectivity and facilitate bicyclists and walking between the community. The next couple projects include traffic studies and safety assessments, and improvement and SS4A improvement projects that identify and implement the improvement for traffic calming. The last project on the list is the bicycle and pedestrian outreach project that support the education programs. Next slide, please. Under this same street category, the CIP also includes several programs and annual projects to ensure that the city's transportation infrastructure is properly maintained for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. The project list on this slide include the annual sidewalk curb repairs, annual street lights, signal and signage, ADA curb ramp, restriping program, as well as street resurfacing projects are the projects that meet the goal and actions of the circulation and safety elements. Next slide, please. The projects on the next few slides are in water, sewer, and storm drain category, which comply with the utility service elements. Under the water category, the recycle water distributions and water conservation program are the project to reuse the use of potable water and to ensure that the city is consistent with the current best management practice and the city policy. The next three projects on this slide include Pinewood well upgrade, Pinewood well rehabilitation projects, well upgrade projects, and water reservoir and pump stations are the projects that ensure an adequate public water supply for existing and future needs while maintaining underground water well as the important water source for the city. Next slide, please. Water leak detections and infrastructure condition assessment and pipeline facility condition assessment program are the programs that provide monitoring of the city water system. The CIP also includes several projects to ensure that safe drinking and fire flow standards are met. The projects include hydrant replacements, reservoir cleaning, cross-connection control program, asset renewal and replacement, minor water projects, fire flow improvements, and Dempsey water line replacement projects. Next slide, please. Under sewer category, sewer pump, these following projects that include sewer pump station rehab projects, minor sewer programs, minor sewer projects, sanitary sewer inspection and pipeline improvements, Force Main A projects are the projects that meet the goal to maintain the city's sewage collection system for the existing and future growth to ensure public safety and increase the lifespan of the system. Next slide, please. In the storm drain category, these four projects are the projects that provide adequate level of service to prevent flooding within the city drainage system. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the Capital Improvement Program outlines a 5-year program for a variety of public infrastructure projects, and it includes associated schedule, financing, and related details. As shown by the analysis incorporated into the staff report and the presentations, the city proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement program is in conformance with the city general plan. Next slide, please. Tonight, our recommendation to the Planning Commission is to open and close the public hearing and adopt a resolution number 25-005, finding that the proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement program is in conformance with the City of Milpitas general plan. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yem. Thank you for the presentation. Actually, I'd like to start with some questions myself. So I looked at the general plan today itself a little bit in detail, and also the project report, right? And I see that in the general plan, there are elements and sub-elements, or sub-elements, subtopics, you can say. So notice that there are 11 elements in the general plan, and out of which you have addressed in your project report 8 of them. Some 3 elements are not addressed. And then for each of the elements, in the sub-elements, you have only addressed some of them. You know, for example, I'll give you the example. In land use, there are 7 sub-elements, LU1 through LU7, but you're only covering up to LU3. The rest of them are not covered. And since you're asking us that we giving our sort of stamp of approval, that you are compliant with the general plan, that's very difficult task you are giving us, Because how can we say that you're fully complying with the general plan when you're only addressing some of the topics and not the others? So first of all, my first question to you is, are there any known areas in the general plan that you are not compliant?
So the capital improvement will never be able to comply with every single policy with the general plan. The general plan is the whole thing for the entire city, or provides policies and elements. The capital improvement plan is focused on infrastructure of the city, it's not based on what the general plan is. Of the projects that we create in the CIP, we have to not only, we look at how do they connect to the general plan. So we're not going to meet every single element of the general plan. We just show how it conforms with some of the elements or policies of the general plan. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so thank you. So I think you're agreeing with my analysis that you're not complying with all the elements of general plan, and maybe it's not expected, that I understand. Given that, I think we'll have to change what I will recommend and also see if other commissioners agree that in the final wording, we cannot really say that you're complying with the general plan, because that implies full compliance or full conformance. So we'll have to change the wording so that you can say either you're partially compliant or you're addressing some of the elements of the general plan, so that it's not sort of misunderstood by the city council or the public out there. So with that, I have more questions, but I will want to see if other commissioners have any additional comments, or what do you think of what I'm suggesting?
Chair, if I may, from the legal perspective, the general plan speaks to a general plan for all development within the city, not just public development, but also private development. And the elements that it sets, as well as the policy goals that it sets and being spoken to, are designed to speak to different types of development within there. So if I'm understanding staff correctly, what they have done is attempt to speak to those elements and those policies that apply to the public side of construction and to this plan, and to show how the CIP budget furthers those policies and there demonstrates compliance with the general plan. Now, in terms of being compliant with the general plan, simply because the particular elements are not spoken to does not indicate non-conformance. A project does not need to further the project, and nor the CIP budget as a whole needs every year to further every element of the general plan in order to be compliant. What would be necessary and important for the commission in making this finding, which is a finding that's required in a review and determination that's required by state law, is to see if there are places where there is non-conformity with the general plan. That is something where a proposed project does not meet some kind of a requirement put forward in the general plan. And I think that's what staff is trying to demonstrate by showing how it actually not only is consistent with, but furthers the general plan.
So if I understand you right, you're saying that what we are approving here today or recommending here today is whether the projects that they have outlined, whether those projects are conforming to the general plan, right? So, to that extent, we can put that wording in our final approval because we don't know what other projects are missing, right? We don't know if 100% of the possible projects with respect to the area that you were talking about are fully covered or not. It will be extremely difficult thing to figure that out. So I'm just suggesting changing in the wording so that maybe it's a win-win situation. We cannot just directly sign and say is conforming all the projects that you're doing, all possible projects that you could possibly would have done under the general plan. Am I making any sense?
I think the point that I would make is that they have laid out the different projects that are put forward, as well as how they meet the goals of the general plan. And then the question before the commission, staff is attempting to show how it actually furthers the objectives of the general plan. The question put forward to the commission is whether or not it's consistent, not whether or not you could do something else or whether or not you could further different goals. It's a consistency determination. So I think that the first question that you'd asked the staff, which I'm not sure if we've gotten that clear answer to yet, was the pertinent question. Is there anything known to be inconsistent with the CIP proposal?
Okay, let's ask that question. If it's consistent, maybe we'll put the word consistent instead of conforming in the final wording. But are you aware of any areas where you're non-compliant, but not consistent?
Not that we know of.
Okay, that's fine. So now I'll pass on any comments from other commissioners.
Chair Gupta, I want to maybe share a few concerns. Maybe it's not clear to me regarding the funding gap and how our decision today is able to take into consideration that you have highlighted that there is still like 50-something million dollars of unfunded projects in the CIP cycle. What is our role in this case with respect to the funding gap?
So thank you, Commissioner, for the questions. So as mentioned, the purpose of today's discussion is mainly to focus on the projects to find that the proposed capital improvement program for 26-30 is in conformance with the general plan. In terms of funding, I don't think there's anything that gonna be the discussion that can help to resolve that any of those funding issues.
Can answer a question. I'll go ahead and answer a question. So what we do on a year-to-year basis is that we look at the CIP from a 5-year budgeting tool, right? The first year of the CIP has to be fully funded. That's the funded year. What we use the CIP is a 5-year planning, basically. So the years, the projects that we identified for funding needs in year 2 to 5 is projected. So what we plan or work plan throughout the 5 years, as we're moving forward and we can complete a phase or a project, there could be at some point during that funding year or that down the projecting that we're still looking for funding. Like for an example for one project I'm thinking off my type, we call it the POC. We have completed the design, but we've identified in year 3 of the CIP that we need a funding need of $21 million. So when we complete a design, we're going out there chasing grants to shortfall, or we have to wait for impact fees, or hopefully that our coffers get enough money so that we can fund that project. So that's one thing that we do is not all projects are fully funded in the whole 5-year, but the full first year has to be funded. Everything else is projected and then looked at on a year-to-year basis.
Okay. So, and the city is not liable to complete the projects if it's not going to be, if funding is not available. Is that correct?
The city are not going to be liable. I'm not quite
Meaning that if we recommend the approval of this conformance, is the city being held to complete this project?
No.
Okay. So as long as funding is available, then it will continue. If not,
That is correct.
it will just be stalled and carry on to the next cycle.
That is correct. I mean, all we're doing here is looking at today, and hopefully we can get that funding need here in 3 years. But that's not always the case due to budget shortfalls, due to budget surpluses, due to we know there's a funding gap and it's hard for the city to come up with those revenues. Therefore, there are grants that we chase. Sometimes we get those grants and sometimes we just don't. And sometimes we have to look at other financing means such as bonds or revenue bonds to, build that infrastructure if really needed.
Okay. And I do have a follow-up question for the water improvement projects. as many of us have experienced in shock at the beginning of this year, where the LA wildfire has been massive. I think it sets an alarm to many community members if our city is truly prepared with the water source in an emergency situation as this. When this capital improvement projects was being forecasted for the next 5 years, is it done in consideration of the new fire risk map? Because based on my understanding was the state has released a new fire risk map. Does that change the projection of some of this capital improvement plans?
Not at this moment. So we do a current master plan, a water master plan, roughly about 10 years. During that master plan, we'll look at growth, projected growth. We'll look at the fire system as a whole and any new regulations, and then we'll go through models to see if there's any needed upgrades within that infrastructure. So in 2022, we adopted the latest master plan that identified a bunch of deficiencies in the fire system, where we're looking to upgrade within a 5 to 10 year projection. But that's based on, revenues as they come in. But we have a plan for those projects over a 10 to 20 year span.
Okay. So since that was approved back in at least the assessment was done back in 2022, so it may, if the new fire maps come into the city, we will not be able to assess the gaps until the next cycle. Is that correct? Because this happens
Most likely. It all depends on what the regulations are. If we need to, if the state is dictating us to look at everything at once, but we'll evaluate what the requirements are and make an engineering judgment if we need to do anything. It all depends.
And Chair, if I may, to speak to some of the legal points around this, to your question having to do with the funding issue, funding is determined by the city council. After this, if approved at this meeting, this CIP budget would next go to the city council. The city council decides whether or not to approve the plan as proposed or to make changes. They are the ones who have that discretionary authority from a planning perspective. Then in terms of the actual funding and cost for those projects, when individual projects are brought forward for funding, the city council is the one who makes the funding decisions, appropriations, other kinds of decisions. So that's their role in the division of responsibilities. Here it's a planning part. In terms of the fire risk map that you're talking about, I can tell you that risk map was recently presented to the city. The city duly posted it on its website for public comment. We're currently in the public comment period. It would then go before the city council for adoption. I can tell you that in that map, the city's, all of the property in the city that qualified for being essentially designated for fire risk in that map was designated at the lowest level possible under that system. Which is consistent with how it has been in previous years. So in terms of your question, which I think raises to new information coming out of that may not have been previously considered, obviously there's a public process here to be done, but I wanted to provide you with that information.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other commissioner have any questions? No questions? No comments? In that case, let me ask you a couple of more questions. So it's related to parks. The first question, how many parks are being upgraded under the CIP plan?
So recently we just basically nearly the completion. One is called ARPA Park Improvement Projects that we have the funding of $3.3 million to improve 13 parks throughout the city. So that is one of the phase 2 project. And phase 1 project is we do some playground renovations. It's about 9 parks, I believe. The total budget for the park improvement is, I believe it's 4.4 million.
So you're doing 9 parks, but how many parks are there in Milpitas? There are more than 20, right?
I believe there are 37 parks within the city.
Parks? So rest of the parks don't require any improvement?
So let me give a little bit background. So back in 2020, we did the park master plan that we have the consultant to provide the evaluation of all parks within the city to evaluate the condition of each park. We categorize the park in good condition, fair condition, or in poor condition that need to be renovated. And as part of the ARPA, I think American Rescue Fund, we were allocated 4.4 million to improve those parks are in poor conditions. So the 13 parks that I just mentioned earlier, those are in poor condition that require renovations.
Okay, thank you. That was good.
I also want to,
You also have another project.
can I
Oh, sorry.
add a little bit more? So that park master plan is basically our document or our guideline to improving parks as a whole, the whole system. Overall, we're in fairly good condition, but we do have to pay attention to a few parks. Now, as there is a funding need or gap with the park, so unfortunately, we don't have a continuous revenue stream. ARPA was a great help for us. We found that in the park, we required almost nearly $10 million to do just immediate needs, but overall, a 20-year outlook, we'll probably need over $80 million to get to a newer type of park or renovation of an existing park. So one thing I would like to mention is that renovation of today's type of parks are very expensive. So we renovate or replace amenities at parks as the funding comes in. Because what we depend on, the fundings is either grants, which is, very competitive with other cities, but also on development impact fees or park in lieu fees.
Okay, thank you. So next topic or question. One of your project is to expand or widen Calaveras Boulevard. Can you give some details about that? But a follow-up question on that is, because this plan is supposed to address the infrastructure requirements for the next actually 5 to 10 years, if I read in the staff report somewhere. So are you not planning to widen, for example, Montague or Landis, because the traffic problems in the city are increasing, and already there are challenges? And I also got some input from the community that the Yosemite Drive, you need to connect Yosemite Drive with Curtis Drive with overpass over the railroad. That seems to be, that could relieve a lot of traffic in that particular area. I don't know if you're aware of that. Connecting Yosemite Drive with Curtis Drive with overpass over railroad. That was the recommendation for some people in the community who told me.
Okay, let me go one by one. So Calaveras widening project, actually, we've got into an agreement. This project is, first of all, Calaveras Boulevard is a state-owned highway. So there is, I wouldn't say difficulties, but challenges to getting these type of projects completed. So in 2010, the city council made this a priority project, and we went to VTA and submitted an application. In 2021, we were able to do a funding agreement with VTA to start planning this project. So right now, we're currently in the environmental planning stage. We're trying to figure out all our environmental issues and our challenges so that we can proceed forward into the design and then thereafter into construction. So hopefully we complete the environmental stage here by the end of 26 and then move into the design, which we're anticipating that it will take about 2 years to do also. So the construction will probably be looking in 2030s, and that's pending of funding. These type of projects are very expensive. So we rely heavily on state and federal funding. So as we're able to apply for those and hopefully we get it, the quicker the project happens. Now, I'm going to ask you, what was your question number 2?
Widenings, Montague and Landis, because there's some input from the community about that. The other road is used all the time.
We don't see any need for widening for Montague. because in part of the task-specific plan, they widened Montague from 680 all the way to Great Mall Parkway. And I believe, and that's a county road. So, and it's my understanding that the county's looking to widening that portion from Montague, Great Mall Parkway to the San Jose limits sometime in the near future. I don't have a timeline for that. So anything going east of Montague, which is Landis, there's no opportunities because of the right-of-way challenges that we have to increasing or widening that road at this time. And what was your third?
Third one was a specific one, which probably is not a major project, relatively speaking, is connecting Yosemite Drive with Curtis Drive with an overpass over the railroad.
I'm trying to visualize this in my head. Curtis is a cul-de-sac, and actually I was there today for some reason. So right behind it, there's our city facilities, the reservoir. So that would be a heavy challenge to do and a very heavy cost. So I would probably, from an engineering standpoint and from a land use location, it's probably never going to happen because of the expense of it and because of that location. And the railroad, getting over the railroad, there's specific challenges there. I really don't see that project ever transpiring.
It might also be worthwhile to note that there's a private development in between those. There's the end of, the end of Curtis Avenue, the railway yard, there's the Union Pacific property, and then there's a large private development next to the Great Mall.
Well, that will make the traffic worse, right?
No, what I mean to say is if you wanted to connect those two roads, you'd have to build the road through a currently existing private development.
There would be land challenges there.
Yeah, that's okay. There's something from the community I thought I'll share with you in case there is any possibility.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so I don't have any more questions. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes?
Yeah, since you brought up the specific project, I do have a question regarding the HOV lane project for 237. It's listed as one of the, I guess, unfunded project at this point. How realistic it is for it to happen? Because just going by what we have today, there's only from 237 westbound, there's only one lane going in. So how do you expand that to a HOV lane?
That project is under construction as we speak. What my understanding is, and I don't have all the details, is that they're going to be working on the on-ramps, the on-ramp from McCarthy going west and expanding that portion. I actually passed by that area yesterday and looks like they're starting construction underneath it and probably going to open up a lane closer underneath McCarthy's. So there's going to be some widening of the lanes in that area. To what extent, I'm not quite sure, but that's what I recall at this moment.
So that will be a very exciting. That will be a very exciting project for a lot of Milpitians who are traveling westbound.
That project was another city council priority. That was a resolution probably in 2015-ish, something like that. So that's finally coming to be after 10 years.
So you're saying that construction has already started?
Yeah.
So funding is already secured, in other words?
That is a VTA-sponsored project. The city only had to provide like a 10% local match. Okay. So that's run by VTA, and they're not fully funding it, but funding the majority of that project.
Okay, appreciate it. And then on something that came to my mind, when you search out for potential grants that's available, how closely do you work with our elected members, such as the federal level congressmen, to try to get funding from federal government? Just because as we have had this Infrastructure and Jobs Act in the last few years, Are there still money left that can be tapped into for local projects by going through our elected officials at the federal level?
When it comes to grants, we usually identify a few grants that we're looking to pursue. We do have a grant writer on board that helps us with that. And they're well tuned with the grant, atmosphere. We also, I believe, we have contacts with the legislation that we're reaching out to their offices, looking to get, onto their list of earmarks. So there's always a constant communication between our city manager's office and legislation. And also, I believe council sometimes reaches out on our behalf.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments, let's come to the wording and the recommendation part of it. I'd like to suggest some change in the wording so that it's not misunderstood. Because I don't think we are in a position to say you're fully complying with all elements of the general plan, or for that matter, even sub-elements. So can we change the wording? I'll need help from Attorney Creech. And of course, assuming all the other commissioners agree, that can we say that capital improvement program is consistent with the majority of the elements of the City of Milpitas general plan? Can we say that?
Chair, if I might suggest, it might be preferable to ask if there's public comment first, so we can close the public hearing, and then we could discuss different proposals as an order of operation.
Okay. Yes. Are there any public comments?
Chair, we have no speaker cards for this item. Thank you.
Okay. Can we then have a motion to close the public comments?
Close the public hearing.
Public hearing, sorry. Close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Vote, please.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Wasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Albana,
Aye.
Commissioner Galang,
Aye.
Vice Chair Colkins,
Aye.
and Chair Gupta.
Aye.
Thank you.
So then, in response to your question about wordsmithing, discussing, so what the state law requires is for a capital improvement program plan like this to be submitted to the Plan Commission in this case for a determination that conforms with the general plan. My understanding of that conformity finding as written is that it does not say that there is, it furthers every single portion, nor that it does all things. It simply says that here are of the elements stated. Here is places where it furthers those policies, and then it finds exactly what you said, which is it says the proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement plan program is consistent with the Milpitas General Plan, including the following Milpitas General Plan parts, principles, and policies. So that's the resolution as written, and that's the language of it as written. So I think it may already be written as you were contemplating.
Where is that exactly? Because I see the word conformance rather than consistent.
So section 2 of the resolution, that's page 28 of the packet, but it's still on the first page of the actual resolution itself.
Okay, just
There is
page 20.
I have it as page 28 of the full packet, but it's the first page of the resolution. And then there's towards the bottom, it says section 2.
Recommendation? No, sorry.
No,
resolution.
sorry, of the actual resolution, because the recommendation is to adopt the resolution.
Oh, resolution. Okay, got it. So resolution and
So section 2 is where it begins the findings that are being made.
they just changed it to consistent. Okay. Is
Well,
it consistent with the Milpitas General Plan, including the following Milpitas General plan, parts, principles, and policy.
Correct. So that is the first finding that gets made. And then farther down, I believe that there is a second finding that gets made that is somewhat similar, but I think, as I remember it, it's on page 14 of the resolution. There's a B, the proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement program is consistent with the Milpitas general plan, including because of its consistency with each of the following elements of the Milpitas general plan.
So you think it's not confusing by any means, or could be misunderstood as if we are saying it's consistent with all of the general plan?
Well, there's a difference between consistency and does all things, right? Consistency merely means, consistency is the opposite of inconsistent. There's no place in which it is inconsistent. What I think staff has put here is a factual showing to show that it furthers the applicable general plan elements, that it is that to the extent these programs have been adopted, they're furthering those elements as well as furthering those policies, and therefore showing that consistency that way in a factual manner. But ultimately, the question is there any identified inconsistency with this plan? And I think that staff, through their review, have found none and has established a sufficient factual basis for the Plan Commission to make that finding.
Okay, any comments from anybody?
Chair, can I make a comment? Yes. We know that this is a basically they call it a proposed. Of course, it will be based on grants, fundings that will be coming. But the staff has done this study, and I'd like to say thank you to Mr. M. That the presentation was very good. I liked even the manner that slow in presenting, so I could absorb it. But right now, this, I would feel, is in conformity. It is in conformity with the general plan, because then it has given us the priorities of the various projects and expenditures, which has priority. And maybe not all the parks would be improved in due time, because this is just a 5 years. So I still feel that the word conformity, it's in conformity with the general plan. Yes, that's my comment.
Are you saying the way the wording is right now is okay with you? I mean, it says consistent rather than conformity.
It may have a little twist with consistency, but in conformity is the word that we always use, that it's in conformity with the prior researches, and what the city and the council has been trying to implement for the city to improve. So it's in conformity. So I think I'd rather use the word conformity to me, right? Consistency is like 100%. Nothing is 100%. Nothing is guaranteed. They say in real estate is information deemed reliable, but not guaranteed. That's just an implement. But I says, yeah, it's in conformity, I would think, than rather the consistency. That's all.
Okay, I think we are now looking at the language issue with consistency versus conformity. To me, it's more in line with whether it's consistent or conforming with the entire general plan or parts of the general plan. But I think you clarified it that it is only with respect to the projects that they have identified, and also relates to the public projects that which the city can do rather than outside of the jurisdiction of the city, which are part of the general plan, right? So maybe you can suggest the best wording so that we are all.
What I would recommend, and I do review the resolutions. The language as proposed, I think, is legally sufficient and legally supported. So that, from a staff perspective, that is the language that is being recommended to you. I can say that from while I understand that every person may use a word differently, I'm not sure if there is a legal distinction between consistent and conformity in this manner. They would both have the same effect, which is if it is consistent or conforms to the general plan. I think legally is the same difference. It is a difference of semantics, not of legal effect.
So keeping that aside, do you think the wording is okay so that we are not saying it is fully compliant or consistent with the general plan rather than partially?
I think that the proposal as stated is fully consistent with the general plan, but being fully consistent with the general plan does not mean that that every capital improvement program plan must further every single element or every single policy of the general plan to be consistent. That's not what's legally required. It simply has to conform to it. So if I'm trying to think of how I can give me a second, I'll try to better come up with a way to explicate that.
Chair, if I may. So thank you very much for the presentations and all the information ahead of this meeting as well as in this meeting today. So I know you guys have done a lot of work. Kind of the way I see this too is there's a lot of irons in the fire with the city as things are going on. So it's the first year of the projects need to be funded. After that, we're hoping we can keep things rolling along. So each year they've got to review this to see where we're at, what we can continue to fund. So that's why being conformity with the long-term game plan is what we're trying to say they're in compliance with to keep the city moving forward. But to the points that have been made, we're probably never going to get all of those done. As long as the state sees us moving forward with this, they'll continue to help keep our overall game plan in compliance and know that we're trying to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm not questioning or worried about what they're doing and what they're not doing. That's understood. They cannot do every possible project in the general plan. So that's understood. The question is, in the resolution itself, the wording that we are using, in that wording, are we saying what we think what you are saying? Are they actually saying in the resolution that we are only addressing certain projects which we think are most important at this point in time, that kind of thing, right? Rather than implying that we're complying with everything in the general plan.
Well, that's just it. It doesn't say we're complying with everything in the general plan. It says we're complying with the general plan.
Yeah.
So the parts of it that they're touching, they're complying with.
Okay. But that, from a legal wording point of view, I'm not sure.
Right. I think the difference would be if the finding said the capital improvement program fulfills all of the elements of the general plan, then I think it would be overstating the point, as Chair, as you have pointed out. Saying that it conforms to general plan, including in each one of the identified elements as stated in the findings, that is of different legal significance. So I do not believe, as stated, it is overstating the point that you've made. And I also think that the Commission for the public has very clearly explicated tonight that that's not what's being said, and that's not it's not saying that it fulfills every single policy and is done.
I think we can put a stop to this discussion and move forward. So do we have a motion to pass the resolution? We need a vote, right?
You do need, yes, you need a motion, a second, and a vote.
Yeah. Okay. We have a motion to pass the resolution, please, as it is.
I make a motion to pass the resolution as it is.
I second.
Can we take a vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Wasi,
Aye.
Commissioner Albana,
Aye.
Commissioner Gulal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Calkins,
Aye.
and Chair Gupta.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you.
new business section. Is there any new business proposal or activity from anybody?
Chair Gupta, can I follow up on the update that I gave from the Planning Academy? If we can have the guidance from the city attorney on how we can engage stakeholder before a public hearing.
So what I can do is to follow up with any individual commissioner who wants to have a legal briefing on that subject. I'd be happy to do that, to give you some legal principles, but I should give that in an individual manner and in a confidential manner that can give you those legal precepts. And I'm happy to do that if anyone reaches out.
Is there a reason why we cannot have like a standard guidelines for every member of the Planning Commission?
So there are, I think, stated in the Plan Commission's bylaws, as well as in the General Commissioner Handbook that applies to all commissions. There are some stated guidelines for how to engage with stakeholders and interested parties who speak to commissioners. So in terms of guidelines, I think that they are currently out there. In terms of the actual legal advice that's behind those guidelines, I always try to deliver legal advice in a confidential setting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Can you elaborate on that input you got from the conference, that you want to engage with the public to get their input? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think this is because there is a lot of, there's very minimal that we can do at the public hearing itself, just because our hands are tied. We cannot require conditions, we cannot really force a change in the projects. And the feedback that we have gotten from other planning commissioners who have been, they have a lot more experience than I am personally. They have said that when they engage with the residents, especially neighbors who are directly impacted by the new projects, they could understand what their concerns are. And like, for example, if it's too close, they might want like a trellis to block, provide more privacy from the new project, things like this, that they can actually provide input to staff, and staff can work with the applicant to consider that design early on before they come in for the public hearing. That way, when they come in for the public hearing, a lot of the concerns from the community would have been addressed. So this will facilitate, I would say, a more smooth process without too much of a pushback that right there and then that we cannot really do much to help, just because we don't have the tools to reject a lot of things.
So are you saying that they want commissioners to see how they can expedite the projects, expedite the application process?
Not so much expedite, but feel what are the concerns from the community early on before the actual public hearing session. That way, that discussion can be fed, like the feedback from the community can be provided back to staff, and staff can work with the applicant to incorporate some of the requests into the project. Maybe Commissioner Calkins.
And just to try to help out, it's one of those, like, by the time we hear about a project and we're basically going to vote on it, we have a couple days for most things. For the planning, for the general plan and stuff, we've done the HOD meetings and that. So there's we've given people a heads up. But what we were talking about and talking with some people from other cities is basically as soon as an applicant submits an application to the city, they get notified about it. So if it's going to be a 5-story building that's going up in a certain area, instead of hearing about it when it comes for a vote, you hear about it, when it's in the design phase. So it gives us the opportunity, if we wanted to try to reach out to local residents and or stakeholders to see where they're at. So we can give feedback early on in it while they're still doing the design, instead of when it gets here and we say, can you provide more parking? And they say, no, it's not, we don't need to, we don't have to, whatever that looks like. So I think that might help, just so we can be notified about projects earlier on.
And also when we engage with stakeholders, we do not overstep our boundary, because if we're going to reach out to neighbors in that community, we want to make sure that we are doing it without appearing to have any biases, right? We want to, in a way, get the best outcome for the city, but we do not want to be in a position whereby if we talk to one side and we don't talk to the other side, we may be perceived as biased.
Okay, I'm in favor of this happening. Anything that helps improve the efficiency of the overall process, I'm personally in favor of it. The question is whether it's okay with the planning department and from a legal point of view.
So I don't want to get, because this is obviously new and an agendized business, I don't want to get too far into it, but happy to provide legal briefing to the commissioners on this subject.
Okay, thank you. Any other topic or new business or? Okay, so I think we can have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm supposed to read something. Okay, any person agreed by any final decision of any board, commission, or department head, the City of Milpitas may appeal the decision to the City Council by filing written notice of the appeal with the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date of said decision and paying the required fee. This item limit shall be strictly enforced. Okay, now we can adjourn the meeting. Any motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Wasti,
Aye.
Commissioner Albana,
Aye.
Commissioner Galang,
Aye.
Vice Chair Colkins,
Aye.
and Chair Gupta.
Aye,
Thank you.
meeting is adjourned.